Hello and welcome to Not Without My Sister. I'm Rosemary McCabe and I'm joined by my sister,
Beatrice McCabe.
We were meant to be joined by our parents, but we had some technical issues, so we shall be getting them on the pod in a couple of days, a week or so. Today we thought we'd talk about unrequited love, something about which neither of us know nothing.
What's that supposed to mean?
Something about which neither of us know anything, because we've never had a love that was unrequited. We've only had requited love. I'm just joking.
Oh, you're having a laugh. I was about to say I have been the subject of unrequited love many, many times.
Have you?
No, probably not. Have you?
Oh. I'm trying to think. No. Did anybody ever pursue me and I said no? No.
Yes, they must have.
I don't think so, Beatrice. I think anybody who ever asked me out, I was so flattered. I was like, of course.
You're like, they have amazing taste.
I'm like, oh, they fancy me, therefore I must really fancy them back.
No, I think there was that dude who came up that time with the McDonald's in the house in when you were in your PJs, and he really fancied you. And you just weren't
I
interested.
didn't.
He was extremely handsome as well.
Yeah, I know. No, I just wasn't. There was something about.
He was too handsome for you.
He was very handsome, but he was also
out of your league.
Oh, just shut up! It was out of my league. How dare you? He probably was a bit out of my league.
No, he was very handsome.
Yeah,
why did you not fancy him?
I don't know. I just think, there's some people just inexplicably. I mean,
probably because he was enthusiastic. He was keen on you.
Probably because
quite honestly, that is a huge part of it. Because there was this one guy who fancied me a lot. Fancied the pants off me, as they say in America. Who really had a big...
Do they say fancy in America?
No, they don't. Who had a big crush on me. Who had a crush.
Who was crushing on you.
Yeah, he was crushing on me like crazy. They don't say that either. But anyway, he liked me. He invited me to his debs. And I always feel like at somebody's debs, like, you really should give them a kiss.
I don't know where you're
Or you shouldn't go.
Fair. Did you not give him a kiss?
I can't actually remember. I feel like I didn't.
Did you kiss someone else?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
As if.
I feel like there was a story about somebody who went to somebody's debs them and kissed someone else.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a situation where I was the subject of two unrequited lovers. That doesn't even make sense. Where I had two people fancy me at the same time. That would have been a stretch now.
Oh, I get you. There was actually one time, you know what? There was your man very handsome with the McDonald's, and there was another guy who...
I can't also believe he had like the key to your heart.
I know. Listen, if you came around now with the McDonald's...
Excuse me, I wasn't finished my previous statement. But anyway, my point was, I think the fact that he was so keen, like he was so openly into me. You know what I mean?
Terrible.
It was like, but is that actually because that's not attractive, or because it's not exciting? Is that like I don't actually think it's you know the way they talk about the excitement of the chase and like how people like to be treated badly, but I think there's just an excitement, and also will they not, whereas if somebody just turns up on your door, so it's like, hey, I really like you, do you want to go out? It's like, well, I mean, okay, but like
boring.
Yeah, but it is already boring.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, yeah, there definitely is an excitement to, oh my God, I used to love fancying people at school, even if like they didn't when, not even if, most of the time they didn't fancy me back. And I just loved, I'd be like, am I going to see him today? Is he going to be in this class? Am I going to see him in the car? Oh, there he is. Like the excitement's been giving me something to think about all day.
Is this the same teenage Rosemary who only told me today that her favourite lunchtime snack was a sandwich of tuna and ketchup?
Mom used to make those for me.
Is this what you were wooing them with?
She doesn't even like tuna.
Yeah, I know. She was obviously like, I'm going to keep these children virgins for longer, as long as possible.
Literally, it was like, so you drain the tin of tuna, mix it with ketchup, and then spread it on a sandwich. I know, Beatrice.
I have never heard any.
Horrendous.
And she loved also making us egg salad sandwiches, which were
she never made.
So embarrassing.
No, I didn't like them.
I mean, I liked them, but why would she be making them for me? It was so embarrassing. No. When you'd open your lunchbox and just smell of farts would like permeate through the room.
They do smell bad. Those tuna sandwiches didn't smell great.
I can't imagine they did.
My friend Roisin, I think, was a big fan of the tuna and ketchup sandwiches too. I must text her and see if I'm misremembering.
Also, like all afternoon, then you'd have tuna breath, and this was when you were like, "Hey, how's it going?"
This is when I was crossing the yard to hand gold condoms to boys I fancied, and go, "Here, you might need this later," and then walk off.
So, like, what? What was wrong with you? Where did you even get a cold condom?
A cold in the fridge.
Where did you even get a gold condom?
I bought it in Boots. They had
like-
it. They had it like you could buy them individually. It was the only way I could get my hands on it.
Like, I
'cause the
hate to
boxes were
break,
too
but like, could you not
expensive.
spend some of that money on a better sandwich?
Just spent some of that money on breath freshener.
I feel like you had your priorities all wrong here.
Beatrice,
One hand
all
a gold
wrong.
condom, the other hand a tuna sambo.
Yeah, and on my legs a pair of skin tight grey flares. I was trying to get away with this part of my school uniform. It's just
So-
a stunning picture.
So let's go back to
And sorry, the gold train tracks. Let's not
But
forget.
let's go back to that's what the condom was to match it. It was supposed to be. That's where your chameleon skills were coming in handy. Is there a condom on my mouth, or am I just happy to see it? So, in the midst of all of this glory, some people in school actually had a crush on you. Am I right here?
I mean, no, that guy with the McDonald's, the handsome guy with the McDonald's, that was after school. He was from school, but that was after. It was like a year or two after we graduated. And then the other guy I was going to talk about, the unrequited love, was a guy that I went on one date with, and then was literally like, don't fancy him. And I remember at the end of the date, he was like, listen, don't be annoyed if you don't hear from me for a while. Like, I'm really busy with work. And then texted me about 5 days later and said, do you want to do this? And I said, I thought you were really busy. And he was like, I was just trying to play hard to get.
He said that to you?
Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm busy now. But I just had decided I didn't fancy him. And then the next time I saw him, we were out for drinks in a group, and he was being like very flirty, and I snogged someone else right in front of him. And he was very upset about it. And I felt
That's
bad
really mean.
afterwards. I know, yeah. But I really fancied the other guy. So I obviously had to kiss him that night just to seal the deal. No, it didn't seal anything. I pursued him for about 3 months to no avail.
God bless.
But there is actually, I mean, I used to find the beginning stages of unrequited love, you know, and you'd be like, I think I fancy this person, especially when I was a teenager. Well, actually, when I was in my 20s as well. Really exciting. And I always used to like having someone to fancy it, like in a workplace as well, because it was like, give me a reason to get up and get glam in the mornings. Glamish. So the beginning stages of the unrequited love I found very exciting. But then once it became clear that it truly was unrequited, that became quite depressing. So I'm like, I just wish I didn't fancy him anymore, because he clearly doesn't fancy me. Do you know what I mean?
Well, at that point, it was, I think you're using the term unrequited a bit freely here. So at the beginning, it was more like the unknown aspect. Once it became clear it was unrequited, it was depressing.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So before you knew that there was no way in hell this person was coming over to.
Oh yeah, because I used to come up with like plans. I'm going to try and find an excuse to talk to them now, and I'm going to try and ask them if they're going to this thing, or see if I can get them alone at this thing. I was very predatory, if you think about it now.
I mean, I see if I can get them alone.
I
Did
know,
you ever
yeah.
manage to get them alone? Who are you even thinking of here? I mean, you can use code names, but like, give us some examples of this.
Well, there were definitely guys I fancied at school who, like, at school discos, I'd be like, I'm going to go over and talk to this person. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to try and have a few words, or like in the yard or whatever. Be like, oh, hey, you know, do you know what the homework is for maths? Because I'm not sure I got, you know, like, so transparent as well, as if I couldn't ask one of the like 8 giggling girls behind me in the corner that I've been
Girls,
hanging out with.
Rosemary, don't be using these tropes. Giggling girls. 8 intelligent women.
Yeah, who
behind you.
happened to be giggling because they were like, Rosemary's going over to try and make a play for your man.
Here goes Rosemary again asking stupid questions.
Did I ever tell you about the time that I walked over to a guy at Wesley at the disco, and I thought I was being real smart, and I went, hey, see my friend over there? And he went, yeah. And I went, will you meet me? Like, as in, will you kiss me? And he went, no, but I'll meet your friend. And then I had to go over and get her. Be like, your man there wants to meet you. She's like, oh, great. So I was raging.
Well, I mean, when do you think you first felt the stirrings of attraction? Or did you actually fancy people in primary school, or did we all just think we did?
Oh, I don't think I did. I think I really liked the idea of having a boyfriend, like from comics and magazines.
Yeah,
that
but
I'd
you've
read
had a
and stuff.
boyfriend your entire life. Like.
Yes, but like what I'm saying is, I don't think I actually had feelings like romantically or anything for anybody in primary school, or like, you know, I think I just was like, I want to, like, it's nice to have a boyfriend. I want to have a boyfriend. Do you know what I mean? And then I think it was in secondary, in kind of first or second year, when I suddenly was like, I'm burning with a fiery fancy for that person.
A fiery fancy.
Well, I was going to say
That's
fiery
nice.
passion. That sounded too much. I was only 13.
It could have been a fiery passion.
Sorry, at the Gaeltacht. I went to the Gaeltacht after first year, between first and second year. And there was a guy at the Gaeltacht that I fancied. I mean, Beatrice, more than I fancied anyone before, and possibly since, except for my husband. And like, I just remember, I thought about him all the time.
Yeah.
Still think about him sometimes. I remember during one of the Kayleys, he sang Brown Eyed Girl, played his guitar and sang Brown Eyed Girl. And I was like, he's singing about me.
And was he?
No.
Oh.
No, he wasn't.
And do you think when you were, for example, dating your now husband, which was a pretty recent event, 2 years ago, were you feeling the same passion, or like were you over the unrequited dating? Like, were you at that point more into people who were into you, or were you still liking the chase and the excitement of?
No, I think probably as I got older, I was more like, if I felt like somebody wasn't into me, I was more just like, okay, move on. Do you know what I mean? Well, not, like, probably more in my 30s, in the last 4 years.
Since I'm married.
Since I'm married. No, I mean, I think, like, I definitely still, like, when I've been in relationships, I still like having someone that you're like, oh, I kind of fancy that person I see every now and then. Like my sister's husband. No.
Oh. You are being
I know.
gross
You're always
today.
joking about that, as if I fancy Don. I don't fancy Don.
Oh.
But the lady doth protest too much.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm too tired to be thinking about this, honestly.
Oh, for God's sake.
I just can't even imagine
having a crush, like.
Yeah, I'd love to meet somebody I had a crush on, don't tell Don. But like, I mean, there's nobody. There's nobody anywhere. There is nobody,
No.
full stop.
Stop
anywhere.
it, you're being depressing. Anyway, sorry. My answer to that question was, no, I don't think I am so interested in the chase, or have been so interested in the chase in the past maybe 10 years, that I think I'm more likely to like someone if I think they like me, which is also a bit sad, because I think like it's a bit like, ooh, they like me. Like, that's rare. I should give it a chance, even though historically it hasn't been that rare. But that's kind of what's been in my head.
Do you ever think, like, sometimes I think some of my friends who have repeated unrequited relationships are not, I think some people would say, your standards are too high, etc. I don't think you can really have standards that are too high. But do you think that, like, sometimes they're protecting themselves from actually having a relationship? What do you think is this psychology behind unrequited love that is not actually like, I'm a teenager and I just fancy everybody, but like when you're an adult, do you know what I mean? When you're more in your 20s or your 30s, like, what do you think? Or do you think it's just that I just happen to fancy these people who don't fancy me back? But if it's an ongoing pattern, like,
yeah, like, do you think it's a form of self-sabotage?
Yeah, is it self-sabotage, or like, not, are you doing something wrong? Because like, there is no right or wrong. Like, are you being yourself, or are you actually really not? I mean, and not everybody wants a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't think, I desperately wanted a relationship. What am I even joking here? Like, all I wanted was a boyfriend to your point, and I don't think it's a bit like a job interview. It's only taken me 20 years to realize that you're interviewing them too.
Yeah,
like, you're actually,
I know what you mean.
Honestly, 100% interviewing them, unless you're in an unhappy job situation that you're desperate to get out of, right?
Yeah. But before that, you're always like, I really, really hope they pick me.
Yeah.
Even though it hasn't occurred to you, do I really want this job?
I don't think it ever occurred to me, like, do I actually really like these people? Are they great? Yeah. And there were a couple of people I went out with who were genuinely great. But then when they started being genuinely less great and they started annoying me, never really occurred to me to realistically break up with them.
Go, like, are they worth this?
Yeah.
Are they worthy of this?
It was like, is this the person like you actually want to even be with? Not for the rest of your life, but like next Saturday. Do I actually want to hang out with this person who's annoying me? You wouldn't think that about girlfriends. You'd just be like, I mean, you and me, girlfriends. But I mean, I would be thinking, oh, I don't want to hang out with her. But I'd be honest with myself. I don't want to hang out with her. And I'd probably think like, I'll be grand. I'll go to the cinema, or I won't do this, or you know what I mean? You do it more on your own terms, a friendship, whereas a relationship is more like, oh, well, I'm going out with him, so I better go and hang out with him for the whole day, etc. Versus,
I know what you mean.
And also with a friendship, I think you're more about like, this is just a phase. She's just annoying me right now. Like, in a couple of months, we'll be friends again.
I'm just going to not hang out with her with the same intensity
it could be
for
both
a few
of
weeks,
us.
and then we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't do that with relationships, because it is more like the expectation is that it's going to build and build and build and build, and that you never really have a week where you go, you know what, I need a bit of a break from you, because that's like the death knell of the relationship.
But it's also normal. Like, but I mean, is that also because we were raised by Claire McCabe, who believes that if you're in a couple, you should be, that if you could ideally fuse yourself with this other person and just become like one entity walking around, never needing to be apart, even to go to the bathroom.
I think the ideal for Claire McCabe would be if one person in the couple could grow a vestigial pouch and have the other person live in it.
She'd love that.
She so would warm and cozy all the time.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing, like, if ever anybody ever shows up without their other half, she's always,
I think that's weird.
She's always just shocked. Yeah. She's confused by it.
Yeah.
Why are they not? Well, like they each have parents, so maybe they're, splitting up and going to the What?
But
Well,
you know
why
what?
wouldn't they just go together?
Like, to your point, I totally have inherited that thinking, because when we have a weekend where we're both myself and Brandon are, to say, ostensibly doing nothing, right? If he goes, hey, I'm going to call over to this person's house for an hour and a half, I'm really like, what? You don't want to spend your whole weekend with me? You know what I mean? Like, my first reaction in my head is that, and then I go, okay, that's actually fine. Like, we can, it'd be nice. I can do something, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter.
But even though mom has that mentality, in real life, her life was very separate to dad's. Like, even though they were
very independent.
No, they were in the same house, but they were doing entirely different things. They were never like, we'd have dinner together, right? But then he would go off and work in his workshop, and she would do whatever she was doing, and read a book or do the laundry or clean up. Like, they literally, and they'd be on different floors.
Yeah.
But just the fact of having him in the building makes her think like they're together.
But like, she also has her girlfriends, and he has his friends who do all the plain stuff.
Yeah.
And like, they do a lot of things in couples, but they also do a lot of things separately, which I think doesn't really occur to her as being the same thing. Like, it's kind of the idea of, like, if somebody invited them for dinner and dad didn't want to come for whatever reason, she'd be like, oh, of course I wouldn't go. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't go without the other person.
Or it's more like family events. If she wouldn't show up, or she would, and she has, but like, she thinks that's weird. If on like Christmas Day or on a birthday, you weren't both there, which, I mean, I think everybody's different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is that part of this idea of a couple? It's just not the same. Yeah, you're right. Like, with friendships, she's more like, that's fine, I'm going out to see my girlfriends, and he's going out to see his friends. But if you're doing something as a couple, she very much thinks like you should be doing it as a couple.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, she's definitely not the only one. Like, I have some friends, I think I've mentioned this before, who literally would tell me all the time about the couples that they're having over for dinner. Like, when I was single, and would never ever invite me.
Well, once they're a couple, Rosemary. They only hang out with couples.
I know.
Not triples.
But I don't know, like when people, like, I definitely have a lot of friends who would have had consecutive kind of unrequited, gone on a couple of dates, thought it's going well, and then be like, oh no, it's not, he's not into it, or, even kind of vice versa, who would have gone on a series of dates and not fancy the person at all, even though the other person's like, oh, I really fancy you. And I don't know, like, what it is necessarily, because I've always found that, like, a lot of the time as I've got older, if I fancy someone, they fancy me back, or vice versa. Like, I'm kind of attracted by their attraction. Like, it's kind of a mutual thing as well, that I'm like I sense if we're getting on, if we're flirting. It's very rare, like, in my adulthood, that I would be like, I really fancy someone and I think it's going really well, and then be blindsided.
Well,
you know what I mean?
for that guy.
Except for
Game of Thrones.
Well, it was only one day. Shut up about But listen, can we just get back to him for a second?
No, we can't.
He
Keep going.
sent me a series of text messages telling me how great I was, and it wasn't my fault. He gave me the wrong set signs.
It's nobody's fault, Rosemary.
It's his fault.
But okay, listen, you watch a lot of romantic television, right? Of real life reality shows. The term I'm looking for here.
Oh God, Love is Blind.
All of them, right?
The Bachelorette. I've started to get into now. The Bachelor, January 4th. Is that tomorrow?
Oh, anyway, you watch all of them. Do you see, like, are there even any unrequited relationships on those shows, or does everybody pair up? Like, because is it partly a mindset? Like, do people go out? Like, are some of these guys or girls who are going out on dates and letting the other person down, are they actually just not looking? Because, like, I feel like, to your point, when I went out, if that person liked me, I was always like, I'll go on a second date, even if I didn't super fancy them. If they were
give it a chance.
Yeah, it was more like, because I mean, you're not committing to anything. It's like, I'll happily go on a second date. The idea of shutting it down after one date, unless that person's a weirdo, like some of the people I went out with were absolutely weird, right? And there was no way I was going on a second date. But like, not to come off as big headed here, but like, I don't actually think I'm that weird, right? I don't think you're that weird. So if you, I mean, or maybe it's a much more physical thing. Whereas it's like, you're nice and everything, but I absolutely find you unattractive, right? Which is, I just can't understand that. No. Which, I mean, fine, right? It could be that. But do you think that like some people are just going out with the mindset of like, I'm not looking at all for anything more than one date at a time? Because on these TV shows, when you go on, they're all looking for a relationship, inverted commas, right?
Yeah.
So they all pair off with somebody at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or is there ever anybody left behind that never dates anybody? And can you see any common threads in their behavior that would lead you to say, this is what causes somebody to be experiencing unrequited love on an ongoing basis? Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that episode of Sex and the City, isn't it? Where Charlotte goes to that seminar and is like, I'm really out there. And your one's like, you're obviously not really out there. You know what I mean? That it's like, oh, like, what are you putting out into the world? But I don't know. I mean, I also spoke to a matchmaker once, I remember, for my other podcast. And she told me that statistically, or not even statistically, but she was like, anecdotally, they find that a lot of women will go on first dates. And even if they're like, to your point, you know, I'm not really sure about him. Not really sure if he's my type, but he was a nice guy. I'll go on another date with him. If a man, this is what she said, goes on a date with a woman and it's like, I'm not really sure she's my type. He's like, not going on another date with him. Like it has to be, oh my God, she's incredible for him to go on a second date. Whereas for women, it's like, he's okay. I'll give him another chance.
It's because we're really realistic.
Really realistic? Or do you think it's because we're so kind of culturally drummed into us the idea that we have to find someone? And there's the whole like,
no, I think it's
clock
also
is ticking.
No, I would say it's also you're culturally drummed into you to be much more
Amenable,
pleasant
yes,
and forgiving. Whereas men are taught like you're going to meet the one and she's going to be everything you dream of. And you're taught like, listen, you're lucky if you get somebody and like just be thankful for the fact that someone's
someday a man will want
interested
to
in you.
marry you and you'll be lucky. And whereas they're
And
like,
appreciate
someday
it.
you'll find the woman worth marrying.
Someday you'll find your Giselle.
Giselle! Like an Enchanted. Right? That's such a good movie. Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know though. Like some of my friends who have kind of gone on dates and come back and been like, oh, like, you know, went really well. And then they'll hear from the guy and like hear, oh, actually it didn't go very well. I'd love to be a fly on the wall because I don't know what happens. Obviously nobody knows what happens. But then it's like, it's one of those totally subjective things, right? That you don't know what causes somebody to be attracted to somebody else.
I bet it's exactly what you're saying. It's like you're hitting 80% of my box. I mean, it's about the guy I went on a date with in Paris. And he proceeded, and I was living in my apartment with Julie at the time. And he proceeded to tell me that he lived with he was like 20 years older than me, number one, which he had not let on about. He was wearing a hideous brown, weird, puffy leather jacket, which he had not let on. He was unemployed, right? Which is fine. I'm actually, you know what I mean? I've always been very attracted to
lesbians,
to people in dive bars, who don't necessarily have the best career prospects. Fine, I'd still happily date you. And he then proceeded to tell me he still lived with he just recently moved back in with his mom and his granny and his 3 sisters. And then could I pay for dinner because he had no money? And then had the audacity at the end of it all to say, listen, thanks very much, but I just really don't find you that attractive, so I don't think we'll go on another date. I mean, halfway through this dinner when I was like, this guy is an absolute spanner, I should have stood up and said, listen, thanks a lot, I'm going to leave. Like, we'll skip dessert. But did I know? I had a dessert, ordered more drinks.
Paid for everything.
The whole time thinking, like, probably won't go on another date, only to be unceremoniously dumped by him. Like, I was so peeved.
And I don't think I think there was one guy I went on a date with, and like, people have to be pretty bad for me to not want to go on a second date with them, honestly. But he said something really racist, and then he was making like ableist jokes about some guy that he knew in college or something, and I was just like, oh, you're a dickhead. And I remember he walked me halfway home and then left me at the keys, so I walked home to Stoneybetter, which I thought was rude as well, because I was like, if you're going to walk me home, otherwise don't, and let me just listen to my music, you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather be on my own. And I texted him that night and I was like, you know, because I'm also such a coward, I was like, I had a nice time, I don't think this would go anywhere, but you know, thanks so much for a nice night. And he literally wrote back and was like, hey, I had a really nice time too, don't think this would go anywhere, I just don't think we'd be, what did he say? He basically said, I just don't fancy you. And I was like, you don't need to say that, I already dumped you.
Well, I went on multiple friend dates with a guy that I actually did have a mad crush on for reasons unbeknownst to myself, even though after the very first date we went on, he said to me across the table as we were having dinner, you look thinner in your photos. I should have just been like, so do you.
You look taller in your photos.
He looked way thinner and younger in his photos.
Probably way taller.
I'm probably way taller, but like, did it even occur to me? No, I just immediately was like self-reflecting. I was thinner back then. I was 5 pounds better back then.
Oh.
You know? No. Absolutely not. Now I'm getting annoyed. Oh, anyway, I like the way you like buried the lead there with the matchmaker information at the end of the episode.
Oh, sorry. I should have put that in the beginning. Yeah. But you know, I actually got a message from somebody the other day saying that they've been following me for years. And, you know, she was like, I really admire that you've kind of gone and done all these things that I mean, kind of accidentally. I don't feel like I actually was like, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and move to America. I was like, oh, nothing's happening. I suppose I may as well do this. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, I don't feel like I was super proactive about it. It was you. It was all you. Thanks, Beatrice. You were right all along.
Thanks.
Anyway, and she was saying, you know, I feel like I'm really stuck and the man I'm in love with has no idea and I don't know how to tell him. And I was like, I'm rubbish at this because like it's, you know, it's so nuanced that I'm like, if it's your best friend or if it's your best friend's partner or whatever, like I don't know any details about it. So like I wasn't going to go, just tell him. I was just like, oh, that's really hard. But it is really hard, right? And like whether it's, you know, like it could be requited.
It is really hard, but also, isn't it also really hard not to know and to drag it on and to, isn't it better to know and to know one way or the other? And even if it's a no, which at 50% could be, or even 90% could be, like, and actually, do you actually know that it's going to be a no already? You know, is there a part of you that knows that this isn't requited? Like, aren't you better off to know so you can move on? Yeah. So you can like look elsewhere instead of wasting time. Because I mean, it isn't a waste of time unless you're going to feel, are you going to feel afterwards that was a waste of time? I wasted my time there.
But is it also nice sometimes to kind of live in the fantasy? Because I think that's what I enjoyed as well about like fancying people and not knowing.
But not yeah, for a while, but not probably if they're writing to you saying, I wish I could tell him. Then no.
No, good point. Yeah. But I just remember the disappointment of like when I fancy people, especially, I mean, probably when I was a bit younger and I'd be imagining, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to, you know, like when we finally get together, and then I would eventually tell them, they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, oh, and all those scenarios would be for nothing.
You know, I just read a thriller, as I said already. Can't remember what her name was again.
56 Days.
56 Days. Excellent. But the first couple of chapters were written from the perspective of the male and female protagonists and their meeting, their moments of meeting. And I just, it was really well written, the kind of the feelings you have and the nerves you have when you meet somebody and you like them and you're not sure, is this a misstep? Have I misread this signal? How, you know, it was really well written. I thought it kind of brought me back to that whole like frisson of excitement. It is exciting.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was always convinced of, and I had validated for me by a guy who I fancied briefly and kind of tried to, you know, make a move on.
Woo.
Yeah, woo, probably a good one. He told me in no uncertain terms that unfortunately, since my hair was not waist length, he would not be attracted to me.
Very specific.
Well, that goes back to your men thing of like, they have very specific requirements. I mean, and maybe our girlfriends who are in these repeated situations also have equally specific, you know, but it seems like nobody kind of says to a guy, your standards are too high. It's like,
well, that matchmaker also told me that she would interview men who would come in and she'd go, okay, what would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of attractiveness? Like taking everything into account, your personality and your looks and what you do and whatever. And she said men would frequently give themselves like a 5, a 6, a 7, sometimes an 8, a 9 or a 10. She's like, but even the men who gave themselves a 5, when she said, okay, what's your ideal woman? They'd say like Cheryl Cole. And she'd be like, okay, no, we need to like reevaluate your expectations. And she said women would come in and might rate themselves a 7 or an 8 or a 9. And when asked what their ideal man was, they'd go, oh, you know, I just want someone who's nice and who has a good sense of humor and who cares about his family kind of thing. You know what I mean? That they didn't come in going, I'm a 7 and I want to date Michael Fassbender, whereas the men did.
Michael Fassbender. But is Michael Fassbender an 8 if he was actually living in, you know, around the local
His very
corner?
nice teeth. He's a gorgeous smile beach. I'd give him an 8 or a 9.
He is very attractive.
Very attractive.
But like, if a man was rating him, is he a 5? Do you know what I mean? Like men.
If he was rating himself, you mean?
No. If he's rating himself, he'd be a 10. But I mean, if a woman was rating a random Michael Fassbender normal person, would he still be a 10? Potentially, because women are much more generous with their ratings as well. True. Anyway, I did have a great ponytail extension that I loved.
You did?
Yes, and I shall share that photo.
Did you get that after going on the date with that man? Is that why?
No, I didn't go on a date with him. No.
Oh.
I knew him. And we were having a conversation and I was like, you know, sort of probing.
Sussing him out.
Yeah, for like, how are we going to get together? And he's like, you know, you'd never be my type because, you know, I only date people with extremely long hair. And at that point, I think I had just cut my hair to like, no. I was living in Paris.
Oh.
I was like, oh, for God's sake. I was like, that's at least 6 years away.
Only fancy women with waist length hair.
Yeah, I know. It really damaged me. That's why I'm so obsessed with my hair right now. I have these terrible bangs. That's why I have these bangs, this fringe now, and it's coming between me and my sleep. Anyway, I do have that picture of me with the ponytail extension.
I know, we'll put it on the Instagram.
Yes, we shall share.
I was going to say when I had my hair extensions, because I almost had waist length
Yes. I'd say that changed your life.
You know what? I actually was convinced it did.
Yeah, I'm not joking.
At the time. And like people basically... It's a ghost.
People,
men, in my perception, but I do believe this to be true, were nicer to me.
Well, Julie had dyed her hair brown one time in Paris and had to dye it back blonde again kind of a month later. She's like, she felt she became totally invisible.
Yeah. Yeah, but I felt like when I had long hair, even stuff like on the bus. I remember one day I didn't have the right change for the bus, and the bus driver just went, "Oh, you're grand." And I was like, that would never have happened to me before.
With your pixie cut.
The pixie cut came afterwards.
Oh, your pixie cut was lovely though.
Oh, I loved my pixie cut.
Yeah, it was lovely. And I mean, was that long hair a lot of maintenance?
Oh, the long hair was a lot of maintenance. It was a lot of like,
very hot.
you had to tie it up in a certain way before you went to sleep. And I was also always really freaked out that it would come out of you to put it like in a bun, a scrunchie, so that it'd be on top of your head and not be like getting rubbed around, because then it'd get really knotty. But I was always freaked out at the idea that it would wind its way around my neck and strangle me in my sleep, which obviously it wouldn't. But like the idea of it, it freaked me out. Do you know what I mean? All that hair.
That's too much Harry Potter.
Oh, and it was gross in the shower as well. And like, you couldn't with hair extensions as well. When well, I had bonds, so when you came out of the shower, you had to try and dry the glue, because if the glue was wet, then it could tear and your hair would come. Oh, it was awful.
Sounds like a lot of
Wouldn't
work.
do it again. It was so much work.
A lot of work. But it looked great. We'll post those pictures too.
I thought it looked great.
It did look
very
great.
glam.
You were very Cheryl. You were very Girls Aloud.
And that was when I was working for the hairdressing magazine, so I used to get free blow dries. So I used to go in and get a blow dry once a week. Yes, that was like, and they'd wash my hair for me.
Those were the days, the glory days.
Those were the glory days, yeah. When I had free haircuts and free Chanel lipsticks. Why did I leave that life, bitches?
I know you could have been getting that Chanel advent calendar this year.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, no, $800 and something
Stop
for
it.
nothing.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for listening. We would love to hear about your stories of unrequited love.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, we actually really, really would. Email us, notwithoutmysis@gmail.com. And someday, very soon, we'll do a mailbag episode, because we have a few things we want
good idea.
that we want to talk about, a few messages we've got on Instagram and emails we've got and stuff. Thank you all so much for listening. If you don't already, you can follow us on Instagram @notwithoutmysister, or individually at Rosemary McCabe and at Beatrice McCabe. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/notwithoutmysister. For $6 a month, you get an extra episode each and every week.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Not Without My Sister is produced by Liam Garrity, sound and original music by Don Kirkland, and our original illustration is by Lindsay Nielsen.
Not Without My Sister is a member of The Warren, the home of great Irish podcasts. As is my podcast, Meet Your Maker. You'll find more great shows at thewarren.ie.